I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
King Charles issued a private order that completely removed Camilla from every future coronation ceremony, rehearsal, procession, anniversary observance, council gathering, and formal event connected to the crowning of William and Catherine. The decision carried no soft language or partial compromise. The woman who had stood beside him at Westminster Abbey was now barred from the monarchy's most sacred stage, inside his private study at Windsor Castle. With only his secretary and a constitutional advisor present, Charles reviewed the final paragraph of the order twice. A coronation is the formal ritual that publicly confirms who holds the crown, who stands beside that person, and how the next reign will begin. That was why the exclusion cut deeper than a simple, cancelled appearance and altered the public shape of the monarchy itself. He placed his fountain pen beside the signed document and rested his fingers on the desk for several silent seconds. His voice remained steady when he instructed that the order be released exactly as written. The command was total, deliberate, and carried his personal signature. Camilla received the first confirmation at Clarence House and initially believed she had only lost access to planning meetings. Her aide then explained the full scope. She would not process, would not rehearse, and would not sit inside the official ceremonial structure. She gripped the arm of her chair and asked whether Charles had signed the order himself. The single-word answer was yes. She dismissed the room, but before the door closed she demanded to know whether William had been consulted. Suspicion quickly replaced shock, because the future king had long been protecting Catherine's position from any competing authority. An additional clause in the signed order transferred every female ceremonial duty to the Princess of Wales, so that she would occupy the symbolic place Camilla had believed still belonged to her. The deepest wound remained outside the public declaration. A sealed internal review, a confidential palace investigation into restricted decisions, had documented a direct challenge to Charles's succession plan. William had already read that review. As Camilla searched for the person she believed had turned the monarch against her, Charles prepared to confront the two people whose futures had made his decision unavoidable. Behind the official language stood for people bound by marriage, succession, loyalty, and years of buried resentment. Charles had signed the order, yet he would not carry its consequences alone. Camilla saw humiliation. William saw protection. Catherine saw a duty she had never demanded, and the king watched the private peace he had spent decades building begin to collapse around the woman he still loved. Charles remained in the Windsor study after the declaration was released. The crown, meaning the monarch's public authority and constitutional responsibility, required him to judge any threat to the next reign without allowing marriage to weaken the decision. Yet he sat there not only as a distant sovereign, but as a husband who knew exactly how deeply the order would wound his wife. In a quiet conversation recorded in his private secretary's account, he admitted he had delayed signing because Camilla would experience the act as betrayal rather than protection. Camilla understood the loss at once. A coronation publicly confirmed who belonged at the center of royal continuity and who would be remembered as one reign gave way to the next. After years of rejection, before standing beside Charles at Westminster Abbey, she now faced the possibility of becoming a spectator while William and Catherine stepped into the future she had expected to help shape. William entered Windsor through a private side passage shortly after the announcement. He paused outside his father's study, straightened his jacket, and told an aide he would speak as the heir, not as an angry son. He believed the next coronation had to center on Catherine, the stability of his own reign, and George's preparation as the young heir. Any competing authority could divide the ceremony and confuse the nation about where power truly rested. Catherine received the news from William without advisors or household staff present. She did not smile. She asked whether Camilla had been informed before her own name was placed in the order. When he replied that the decision belonged to Charles, she noticed how carefully he avoided discussing the sealed evidence. She pressed him gently, asking whether this was punishment or protection. His silence told her the truth was darker than either word alone. Camilla confronted a long-serving aide at Clarence House and demanded every name connected to the review. When William's office was mentioned, She removed the ceremonial brooch prepared for her next engagement and placed it on the table. Charles feared he had acted too late. She feared permanent displacement. William feared chaos in the succession. Catherine feared being portrayed as the woman who benefited from another's fall. The question was no longer whether the order hurt them. It was whether the king had defended the monarchy or sacrificed his marriage to save it. The answer lay 6 weeks earlier, when one demand inside a private ceremony turned old tension into a point of no return. The crisis did not begin with the signed order. It began during a closed ceremonial rehearsal inside St. George's Hall, where fewer than 12 people were permitted to remain. What should have been a technical discussion about William's eventual accession became a struggle over status, memory, and control. By the time Camilla left the room, Charles understood that silence would no longer preserve unity. Silence itself was now threatening it. The gathering had been arranged to test how the royal family would move through a future change of reign. An accession is the formal moment when a new monarch takes the throne, while a coronation is the later ceremony that publicly confirms that authority. Every entrance, signature, chair, and procession position mattered because each one told the nation who represented the present, who belonged to the future, and where power would pass next. Charles stood beside the central table while officials reviewed positions for himself. Camilla, William, Catherine, and George. The mood tightened when a courtier moved one chair slightly behind the place reserved for the future king and his wife. The queen consort stopped him, pulled the chair back into the central line, and declared she would not be placed behind the next generation, as though the present reign had already ended. Camilla then made the demand that changed everything. She insisted on retaining a central processional position beside Charles during William and Catherine's coronation. She also requested authority to approve the ceremonial jewels and seating arrangements assigned to the Princess of Wales. Those details publicly defined rank, legitimacy, and influence inside the next royal household. Catherine lowered the notes in her hands, but said nothing. William asked whether the proposal carried constitutional approval. Camilla answered that custom could be interpreted by the reigning sovereign, forcing Charles to choose between supporting his wife and defending the boundaries of the next reign. Charles refused. He told her that the future coronation belonged to the incoming monarch and consort, not to those whose reign was ending. She answered that she had endured years of public hostility to reach her present place and would not watch that position disappear without a fight. William's restraint finally broke. He stated that Catherine's role would not be negotiated. Camilla turned toward him and accused his office of planning her removal long before the rehearsal. Then she mentioned private ceremonial files she should never have known existed. Charles changed instantly. Those restricted plans had been available only to his office, William's advisors, and a small constitutional team. He ordered everyone out except his private secretary. When the doors closed, the monarch stared at the displaced chair and demanded a complete review of who had accessed the material.